Hey folks, it's Abby, and in July I read 4,941 pages across 16 books. Not sure how I managed that, and I listened to 23 hours of audiobooking. My largest book wasn't that big this month. It was The Enchanted Greenhouse by Beth Durst, and this one came in at 388 pages. And my oldest book wasn't that old this month, and it was A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms by George R.R. Martin, and this was released in 1998. I read 7 fantasy books, 3 contemporary books, 1 romance, 2 sci-fi, and 3 non-fiction. The books I hold up might not exactly match the numbers because I am not finding other books to put in for ebooks and audiobooks that I read, so forgive me. For the nationality of the authors, I read 8 books from English authors, 5 books from authors from the United States, 1 book from a Malaysian author, 1 book from a Japanese author, and 1 book from a Korean author. I read 2 books via ebook, 2 via audiobook, 2 mixed media between ebook and physically reading, 5 paperbacks, and 5 hardbacks. I started off my month by reading 2 Terry Pratchett books from the Discworld series. The first one was The Last Hero, and I read this one as an ebook because there are illustrations inside of it, so I had to do that rather than the audiobook route. This is about Conan the Barbarian and his troupe going to confront the gods. They are at the end of their lives, they want to do one final big hurrah, and it's discussing that, and obviously Terry Pratchett manages to include a lot of fun in there, so this was a really fun read. I then listened via audiobook to The Amazing Maurice and His Educated Rodents. This one was so silly and so fun. Maurice and his rodents had actually ended up eating something mysterious from the unseen university and end up with full consciousness, and they go about doing like a fake Pied Piper routine to get money. The rats are lured out by a young boy who plays the pipes, but obviously they just know him and they're like, oh, it's time to go, and then the town pays them. And it's about how they kind of have this hustle going, but they also have a community, and they of course have feelings, emotions, they should have rights, and how they treat each other is a really fun, interesting little read, and I'm glad that I managed to read both of them, as well as a full Discworld novel this month. Speaking of full novels, I read Network Effect by Martha Wells. This is the only, or this first, full novel in the Murderbot series, which I adore to the end of my life. I adore this series so much. The very first book in this series is about a security unit that calls itself Murderbot. They've overridden their governor module, and so they're able to do what they want without punishment, and what they end up doing is watching TV shows and saving the idiot humans from themselves, and it goes from there. It's a fantastic sci-fi series, I love it so much, and it was so fun to read something so long form. We get some previous characters from former novellas reintroduced in this book, as well as some brand new characters linked to the former ones. I, as always, had a fantastic time with this series. If you are at all interested in sci-fi, this is just such a fantastic series, and a great starting point because they're so short usually. Even this novel was only, what, 350 pages? Yep, so fantastic series. Oh, it's so good. No, I haven't watched the TV series yet. I will. And then going from something that's very Abby to something that's very not. The folks over at Book Break gifted me Behind Frenemy Lines by Zen Cho, and this is a romance book. Who am I? And yet here I am, I loved this. I had such a great time with it. So I have read 3 fantasy-based books from Zen Cho, so I know I really like her writing, which is why I was willing to give this a shot, combined with the fact that I have been reading a little more romance in my fantasy novels, so I was curious to see how this would go. I had a great time. Apparently I can like romance. Who am I? Regardless of that, I really enjoyed this. Frenemy makes this fairly obvious. We have 2 people who end up working in the same company, in the same office, and they end up pretending to be each other's partner for various different reasons, stopping creeps, making family happy, and obviously it turns out that they actually like each other. And it all goes from there, and I had a great time with this. I think it was done really well. There was some miscommunication, but it was done without being infuriating. Zen Cho's writing is just as good in a contemporary format as it is in her fantasy, and I had a great time with this. Massively different vibe! Unlawful Killings by Her Honour Wendy Joseph KC. This is about British law and the application of it. It's about primarily, of course, murders, and Her Honour Wendy Joseph goes through different cases in each chapter and talks about, at the very beginning you get an overview of what happened. It's written in a fictionalised style, of course, everything has been changed for legal reasons, but it's written in a fictionalised style of the true events of what actually happened in this usually murder case. And then you are introduced to the facts as Her Honour was introduced to them, so finding out about how the court proceeds are going to go, and she educates you about that as you go through, and then you're in the courtroom with her and having the interaction, and then you are with Her Honour for her thought process of the sentencing and what then happens. It's a really interesting insight into UK law, so if you have any interest in that, or if you are British, I really recommend this one. It's really readable, unlike a book that I read slightly later in the month. This is an incredibly readable non-fiction, and I think it's a really good insight into how our law system works, where the errors are and where we're letting down vulnerable people, and also just being very interesting and looking into crime. Empress and Aniya by Candice Carty-Williams is a very quick read and I enjoyed it. This is a contemporary with a fantastical twist. So there are two young girls who go to the same school. One pays for this expensive fancy school and the other one got in on a scholarship because they are incredibly smart. The girl who got in on a scholarship comes from a very underprivileged background, and they end up swapping bodies on their 16th birthday and experiencing what it's like to be in each other's worlds, and it teaches them a lot about each other. I enjoy that this has a happy ending, I will say. That's always nice in a short story, because otherwise you're usually left hanging. And I thought that this was a really good way to look at both racism and classism and privilege and education, and comparing all of that in a very short amount of pages. Both of our main characters, both girls, are black, British, and like I said, the same age. They turn 16 on the same day. Seeing the privileged side compared with the underprivileged side when they are both the same race, and that race has an impact on both of them, so they both experience racism, and so the richer girl assumes that she went through not the same sort of struggle. She thinks that they can't be so different, and she is kind of shown the reality of that, and I think this is just done really well. I just really enjoyed this. I think it was really well done. I am debating whether or not to keep it because I really liked it, but I don't think I'll reread it, and part of me wants to put it into more people's hands. So, like, I really liked it, but I am tempted to unhaul it just to make sure that more people get to read it. So we'll see. Then my chosen read for these 10 books will expire. If you want to see that video, that's up here. This month was Foundation by Mercedes Lackey. I have been urged to read this by Carrie from Caring for Books for so long now, and I gave this 4.75, I do understand. This book was unhauled to me from my uncle, and I can see why he wasn't able to carry on with the book, and that is the one thing that brought it down, and that is that fairly near to the beginning, our main character is taken from this enslavement and is introduced to the wider world. Don't feel like that's a spoiler, but the way that it's done is very info dumpy and could use a lot more thought and could have been written better. That is my only issue with this book. I loved everything else. It was giving me Pellinor vibes, so obviously I was loving it. So that was my only issue with this. However, I love the rest of it. I want to know more about what happens to Mags. I need to carry on with this series. I really enjoyed it. It is a great YA high fantasy. I blasted through this one. Another book I blasted through, and that is Alchemy and a Cup of Tea by Rebecca Thorne, the fourth and final book in the Tomes and Tea quartet. I am so sad that it's done! This one was sent to me by the wonderful folks over at Book Break, and I love this series so much. The first one is Can't Spell Treason Without Tea, and it is a cozy fantasy series following the head of alchemy and the head of the Queen's Guard in a different realm, and they can never be together. They are too opposed politically, but also physically they're very far apart. But they decide, screw everything, and they're going to go open a cute little tea shop in the north of one of the countries, near some dragons, and they're just going to live their lives. And of course they're not allowed to, and everything goes down in 4 books. It is cozy, it is wonderful, there's fantastic representation in here, both of different relationships, but also just like good healthy communication, and I just, oh, these are so cute. The dragons, the griffins, oh, I love this series so much, and I would love to read more in this world, even if we don't get any more from our 2 wonderful main characters. Then a non-fiction I didn't enjoy quite so much, and that is Ancient Egyptian Warfare by Ian Shaw. I have nothing against this book in itself. Unfortunately, this is written very academically. That was my issue with it. And whilst there is nothing wrong with that, it does make it a slower read and harder to recommend. This is very specifically about the warfare, as you would hope, but is very much written like an academic text, like a written academic article. And if you're not wanting to read an academic article, it can be more of a difficult read. I did find it very interesting, I did enjoy reading it, but it's just not one that I'm going to recommend to people unless you are like really interested specifically in this. I picked it up because I thought it was pretty. And I've read it now. On a very different note, I read A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms by George R.R. Martin, which is a collection of short stories following Dunk, a knight, and this is obviously set in the Game of Thrones world. I've only ever read the first book. I've watched the whole show, much to my regret, with the end season. This was really good. I have been avoiding the books because I thought that they would be difficult to read. I remember struggling with reading Game of Thrones when I read it years ago now. Oh my god, it must be like 5 years ago. But I am much more used to reading big adult fantasy books now, so I imagine that's changed, and I really liked the writing style in here. I also enjoyed that there was a lot less of the misogynistic bullshit in here. There was some, but much less. Much preferable. This was really fun. If you have any care about the series, the characters are linked into the series, but it's set in a very different time period, so it's just a fun set of stories. I really enjoyed it. It was a nice time. I think I gave it 3.75, so glad I picked that one up. And another one from the folks over at Book Break, another cozy fantasy, The Enchanted Greenhouse by Sarah Beth Durst. Now this is technically the sequel to The Spell Shop, which I haven't read. You can read this separately from it. It does mention some of the characters from the Spell Shop, and I want to go back and read that now. You can read this standing alone. Imagine that when I read the Spell Shop I'm going to get the experience kind of that people who read it first are going to get when they read, you know what I mean. The references to the characters. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to learning more about them. This is just so sweet and cute. So we are following a librarian who does magic when it's illegal for them to do so. They do alchemy, and that's illegal, so to make an example of her they turn her into a statue, she's conscious in there, and just put her in the library, and they're like, that's what you get if you do magic. No. Time passes and stuff seems to be going on, and then she gets woken up and she's on an island with one other person, a young man, and it's just an island full of greenhouses, but they're failing, and he thought that she was an actual sorcerer and was going to help her fix the greenhouses. Now of course she isn't, she wasn't supposed to be practicing alchemy, but she tries to help anyway. I'm explaining this so badly. I don't even care, I love it. It's another one with fantastic communication, it's got magical talking plants, it's got a cat with wings. I love it. And magic and like intrigue, and it was just so good. It was so good. I need to read The Spell Shop. I need it. I need it! Then I wasn't sure if I was going to read a full Discworld novel this month because I read the other two books before, but I decided to anyway, and I read Night Watch by Terry Pratchett, which is considered by some to be the best novel in the Discworld. I don't think that I necessarily agree with that. I have others that I personally preferred, but I do understand why this was put as a modern classic from Penguin and why people love it so much. We follow Sam Vimes, who is the head of the police force in Discworld, in Ankh-Morpork, not in Discworld, and he ends up being sent back in time and has an influence over his own life events. I love time travel. I love playing with space and time, so I really enjoyed that. We get to see some other characters from different stories brought in, which I really enjoyed. The monks. I'm glad that we got more of the monks. I never knew... Why have I left the bookmark in this? I never knew where the story was going, and I really enjoyed it. This is... Oh, I also really enjoy it, if I can... Can you see this? I enjoy the art choice for the cover design. Fantastic from Pratchett. Talks about a lot of topics that are important about what's right and wrong, about like social and economic differences. Pratchett is fantastic as always. I'm going to be intrigued to see when I finish the entire series where I think this one sits. At the minute it's high, but it's not at the top for me. Then a book I really didn't enjoy, and that's To the Moon. I read this as an e-arc on NetGalley, and this one is about 3 women in South Korea who work at a company and they aren't really thought well of in the company, not for any reason that they've done, they just aren't right, and they end up getting into cryptocurrency. I don't know why I picked this book up, I think it was just the cover, but no, it ended up feeling like a big advert for cryptocurrency, even though like at the end it nosedives and there's the whole thing around that. But it just felt like an ad for cryptocurrency, and I kept reading because I am stubborn, because I have an arc, and so I feel mildly obligated to read it, and I wasn't offended by the contents. And it was fairly short. I did enjoy kind of seeing the interpersonal relationship between the three women and seeing how that changed and developed as this whole cryptocurrency thing went on. But yeah, it just felt like an advert for cryptocurrency. I am personally not the biggest fan of cryptocurrency, so this just wasn't for me. On a more positive note, I read Planet Earth 3 by Matt Brandon, Michael Gunton and Jonny Keeling. I really enjoy these non-fiction adaptations of BBC scientific series. I really like them. You get a little bit of behind the scenes of the filming of the series, which is always enjoyable, whilst also getting the vast majority of the content from the series, as well as like beautiful photographs and stuff inside. I'm not a big TV watcher, although if I am, documentaries is my preferred media, but this is just really interesting, really easy to read, and I enjoyed it, so I recommend. This one was weird. The Memory of Animals by Claire Foer is all about a virus that has swept across the world, and there were a group of people who were taken into a secure facility, and they were going to be the first human test subjects for the vaccine for this virus. And when they're in there, a new strain of the virus comes in and wipes out what appears to be the entire human population, with just zombies walking around the street, essentially. We are following these people who are trying to survive. They have secrets from one another, they're keeping secrets essentially from themselves, and we also flash back to our main character's earlier life, because one of them has this like sci-fi machine essentially where you can relive your memories, and our main character ends up using that, and that's how we learn more about her and her past. I think that was a really unique way of doing it. It sounds ridiculous saying it out loud, but it works quite well in the story. It's a really interesting sci-fi that talks about like survival, about family, and about caring for other people. Some of this was really dark, and I didn't agree with some of the decisions that the character came to. For example, all the other people in this scenario in the locked in room do something, and the character's like, oh well, I understand why they did that, because I did this bad thing too. Not the same, not remotely the same. One of them actively caused the death of 2 people and the other one passively caused the death of 1 person. Active and passive is very important here. Disagree. Regardless, this was a very interesting book, and I did enjoy my read through. And then my final book of the month, and that is Days at the Morisaki Bookshop by Satoshi Yagisawa, translated by Eric Ozawa. I enjoyed this. No one is surprised that I enjoyed this. I loved it so much. I swear this was gifted to me, and it doesn't have a gift note, so I'm very sorry for forgetting who sent me this, and I'm very grateful. We follow a young woman who ends up quitting her corporate job because her boyfriend works there, her ex-boyfriend, who it turns out was actually then engaged to be married to someone else and had been with them for years, and our main character had no clue and could not handle working in the same office as them anymore. And when they're trying to then live their life with no income, they are invited by their uncle to live with him in his bookshop that he runs, and no rent has to be paid, she just needs to help out sometimes at the bookshop. And of course, in these beautiful, thought-provoking translated novels from Japan, we see her come into her own, really discover what she wants with life, come into understanding more people. It's just... If you've read any of these Japanese translated novels that are specifically like in this kind of cozy genre, you know the exact vibe, and I really like it. I'm definitely going to be picking up sometime soon more Days at the Morisaki Bookshop, because I am really enjoying this. I think it's really well written. This is all about the comfort that can be found in books, both new and old. I think we can all resonate with that quite well, and yes, I had a lovely time reading it. And that was my July reading. I had another fantastic month. Honestly, my reading this year has been ridiculously good. I've been having a fantastic time, even if I am reading at a slightly slower pace than last year, but I'm never going to complain about that, because it means I'm actually having a life, very rare for me. Please let me know down in the comments if you have read any of these books, if you have the same or different opinions about them. I would love to hear your thoughts, and if you'd like to see what I'm reading in August, that will be linked up above. Thank you so much for watching, folks, and I will hopefully see you in the next video. Bye!